Hello you, welcome to Geekism. You join me again in Pinewood Hills, our realistic British theme park here in Planet Coaster. 1.4 is here. Unfortunately this video was recorded before 1.4, well the actual footage was. I'm recording this about 3 hours after 1.4 dropped actually. Such is the life of a YouTuber, you often have to get sort of stuff recorded at different times and various things. So there are no 1.4 features in this episode. There will be another episode hopefully in the next couple of days where we kind of go through the park and 1.4 it up basically. We sort out some picnic benches, we sort out some staffing, all the different features that have come with 1.4. We're going to go through Pinewood Hills and implement what we need to do. So anyway, let's talk about what we're building here. It is a Junion, It's a Junion, that's a new word I've just made up and I'm going to stick with it. It's a Junion, which is a slang term for a junior wooden roller coaster. This is very heavily inspired by Blackpool Pleasure Beach. They have the Nickelodeon Streak, which was originally just called RollerCoaster, much like the Thunderer was originally called RollerCoaster here in Pinewood Hills. And next to that, they had one that was called the Little Zipper. Now I think it's called Blue Streak. Yeah, that sounds right, and it's a small family wooden coaster that sits alongside the larger one as kind of an entry point for younger kids into figuring out rides and whether or not they like them or not. Both of those rides are kind of kept going by the fact that they've been they have a sponsorship deal with a company, obviously that company being Nickelodeon, so that's something else that we wanted to try here, but we'll get onto that a little bit later on. First of all, talk about the coaster itself. I really wanted to build a coaster because I tried building the Big Woody and Mike came in and fixed it. So I wanted to have another go. I don't want every coaster in the park to be somebody else, although I'm more than happy for other people to come build them. I wanted a few little stamps of my own, so thought I'd have a go at this, and I wanted it to look a little bit like a almost like a flat pack. I don't know what, like a template type model. I don't really know what the word is, but as opposed to it being designed specifically for this park, this is a wooden coaster that's kind of, they might as well just say, yeah, this is our standard Woody coaster. So that's what we're doing here. So it's purely on its own footprint. It's literally just sort of plonked down on a moonscape, which is a term I picked up from this week's Bro Coaster, and I think it actually looks pretty good. The actual design of it is pretty much a blatant rip-off of GamingKoala's junior wooden coaster that he's just put into Medley Valley that I absolutely love. It's turned out beautifully. I also have a go at some custom supporting that he did as well that I think looks really great, so thank you very much to the TheGamingKoala for the inspiration. If you've not checked out his series, you really should. Medley Valley is shaping up to be gorgeous. So that's the idea here. I mean, you could argue that in the Planco world now that this is actually a sort of template, an off-the-shelf coaster, because it's very similar to another one that exists, but whatever you want to do. So here we go, adding some queue in. Again, this would be similar to the Thunderer. This probably wouldn't have had so much as a queue here. It's been added on years later, and we've got that sort of large expanse of concrete and tarmac here. So getting it running, first of all, seeing whether people actually come and ride it. The numbers are pretty light, but they're kind of as you would expect, so 3.5 on the excitement, and then about 2 on the fear, and pretty much nothing on the nausea. So overall it works out quite nicely. We're going to be having a go, like I say, at some custom supported. I've painted it this light blue colour here. That's probably the colour it would have been originally, maybe. It ends up being an orange colour, and you'll see why in a little moment. The orange much better fits its theme. Now, when I say theme, this isn't heavily themed at all. Obviously, there isn't really going to be a coaster in the park that's heavily themed. But there is going to be a little bit of theming based on an IP that's kind of not bought the coaster, but sponsored the coaster, and as like we did with the Midway games here, part of their deal for being allowed a restaurant in the park is that they subsidise the sort of upkeep of some of the other features, the older features in the park. So that's kind of the idea here. Like I say, it happens quite a bit from what I can tell. You go around, you see a lot of sort of IP deals with relatively random companies. You can kind of make sense of something like Spinball Wizard at Alton Towers being themed around Sonic the Hedgehog. That kind of makes sense. Sonic Spinball, it's a kids TV show, kids video game. It's super fast and spinny company and all that. That kind of makes sense. But then for many years, the log flume, or the flume as it was known, was sponsored by Imperial Leather that makes soap. Now again, I can kind of see the connection, water and soap, but what a soap company gains from having a theme park ride themed around it, I don't know. But yeah, what you're going to do. Some of the IPs are a little weird. So here we go. We make it orange. Again, a little bit of a homage to the Blackpool coaster there, even though in Blackpool it's actually the larger one that's orange and the smaller one that's blue. But still, I thought orange was just a great colour for it. And it's also it gives this kind of idea that they've took this really old wooden coaster and they've said, we need to kind of make this more modern. We need to make it appealing to kids. Let's just paint it orange, let's just make it super bright, So that's kind of what we've done. So doing some terrain work here. Again, a lot of this needs tweaking. It actually turns out quite nice, but I think this rain, I've gone a little bit heavy there with some of the paint, so I'll probably go back over, spend a little bit of time off camera and figure that out. So here I'm saving it as a blueprint. The reason I'm doing that is so that personally it's the easiest way I found to get the same track in the same direction, so that we can do a transfer track. And I'm keeping these really simple, by the way. I'm not doing massive structures around them. I just kind of like the idea of a transfer track. And again, this is very, very much inspired by the Blackpool coasters, especially the Big Dipper. It has this transfer track that pretty much just rolls onto the station, and the second car there is pretty much stored next to where the first one drives off. There's no separate docking, there's no separate warehouse or anything like that. It's just a way of getting it out of the rain, I think, pretty much. So we'll start working now on the coaster station. One thing I haven't done on Thunder, actually need to go back and do, and that's spend a little bit of time on the well, I wouldn't call it interior of the station, but this sort of edge piece here, we've got the little booth, and I really wanted to kind of build that into the station rather than the guy just sort of be plonked down there. So here I'm going to spend a little bit of time making an actual station booth. And again, the theme here is kind of like Thunderer, but a few years later. So this coaster is the history behind the coaster is that it was built in what did I say originally? I can't quite remember. It says it on a billboard, which we'll show you later on. I think it's 1951. I think so. It's like 3 or 4 years after Thunderer is the idea. So it's still a similar theme. It's still very much set in this sort of stoic sort of, really sort of hanging on to the Victorian style architecture of the earlier decades, sort of pretty gardens out the front, that sort of stuff. But then there's a little bit more modern, there's a little bit less money spent on it maybe. The parks, I very much want this park to be a successful park, so that it's going to have money, and it's always going to have money for new rides and stuff like that. But there's got to be a level where executives get involved and investors get involved, and everything's always sort of down to the wire in how much you're actually allowed to spend. So that's definitely something I'm going to take into account as the park progresses forward. Certain designs are going to be slightly limited by the fact that, no, that's just too expensive to do, basically. So yeah, that's kind of the idea. So this station, it's an open station. It's not a complete full building. We're going to do a small tower just here. But apart from that, it's pretty standard stuff. It's basically just a roof over the structure. It's stopping people getting wet. That's kind of the only reason it's there for. And the same with a lot of structures in these smaller parks. They basically exist because it gon' be raining, because it's in the UK, and that's what happens in the UK. It rains. Excuse me, I've just had my dinner, and it's wanting to tell you about it. So we had a few of the windows there. Again, I'm a little bit of an argument with myself about how much detail I want to do underneath stuff, so here, for instance, underneath the roof, is it really worth going in and under there? It's only really ever going to be me going into that sort of T-camera mode and actually looking up there, whether or not it's worth saving the polygons, whether it's worth saving the space for use elsewhere. I don't know, let me know. There's about 3 or 4 roofs now that technically can be seen, that probably need to have a little bit of work done to them. I think is probably the way to go with it. But here we go then, like you say, we're using a little bit more brick this time as opposed to wood. The original structures are mostly wooden. This one has a little bit more brick going on about it, most likely because in my head I feel that brick is a little bit more sturdy, a little bit more sort of better value for money. So they would probably use brick over wood just because even though it probably costs more in the first place, it would be a lot more manageable. So we have a tower here that we robbed off of Thunderer, but it's, as you can see, it's a similar style, but it's much simpler. There's no gold on the top, there's no sort of fancy beam. So that's kind of the idea I've gone for here. It's similar but not quite as good. That's kind of the idea I've gone with this structure. A couple of windows, which are most likely just for show. I'm not trying to propose that there's a building in there or anything. The idea is that that's just they've just placed those there for show. And then we start off with the first of many pieces of this sort of copper fence, which is that one. There we go. And this is going to be the sort of running theme through the build. Okay, so we use this piece pretty much everywhere that you see, even around the station, and then also on the path outside the station as well. And this is the sort of the small motif that we carry on through. So we're now doing a little bit of work to the path here. Again, maybe the slope there was the original path. And then the small space to the right there where they're queuing on the ground, that was the concrete. This bit here we're doing, this is probably added at a later date, probably when they put the ride photos in there for Thunderer. This doesn't have a ride photo, it probably could, but I'm physically struggling for room in this area now, and two, it's a small ride, it probably wouldn't really have the budget to have a member of staff there completely. Couple of benches here. I was going to move them, but I thought, no, do you know what? They kind of work quite nicely there. We'll put some fence around them, and then we carry on the fence there. We'll actually come back and edit that fence in a moment because that's going to be our Pinewood Through the Years billboard for this ride. So we will come back and do that. Again, here now we're showing a bit of a later addition. Safety measures here being added in to stop people getting anywhere near the coaster. They probably would have originally been some iron railings that were much lower and didn't conform to OSHA, I guess, so they've gone in and redone those with some larger sort of metal fencing, and they've painted them orange again, and there's some billboards going in there. You don't actually see what they are on the time lapse, but you'll see a clip later on what we put onto those. I'm a huge fan of billboards, almost to my detriment, because when 1.4 launched there was a bit of an issue regarding parks with lots of billboards in. Luckily it was hotfixed before I managed to open a regular park. I streamed when the update launched, but I just went into an empty park and messed around a little bit, so it wasn't too much of an issue for me, thank goodness. But yeah, apparently the game 1.4 didn't like billboards, but it's been fixed now, and I'm glad because I love billboards. I use them all the time. I know other people have a bit of an issue with them. I know other people don't like to use them. They think they're cheating a little, but I personally think they can really enhance the place, and they could just sort of really open up some of the abilities of the thing. So you'll see here who it is that sponsors the coaster. It is Tiki Cheeky, so we're basically carrying on this whole run there. They've got the restaurant at the top, they've got the midway, and they've got this little coaster. I like the idea that they probably wanted Thunderer, but Pinewood Hills were like, no, Thunder is its own bag, baby. Thunder is its own beast, and is more than happy on its own. But you can have Little Thunder if you want. Little Thunder can be yours. So they have a Little Thunder, and it's Tiki Cheeky themed. Here's a little bit of original gardening here. Need to go back and have another go at these. I think some of the colours are a bit bright. I've mentioned it loads of times on my videos. Unfortunately, I struggle with colours a little bit due to my tritanopia, so I think I need to go back and maybe tone them down a little bit. A few little bits of detail in the hedge there. I like the idea that this garden isn't as well kept as Thunderer's, just because it isn't as as big a deal, basically. So here I'm just turning on path queue railings for a moment, because I want to put my own railings in there, but it's the easiest way to actually see where the path sits. I've gone for a bit of a cattle pen here with the ability for it to loop around if needed. So here, whereas on Thunderer we have the cattle pen open, on Little Thunder here we don't have the cattle pen open, but it's there if we need it. I mean, obviously this is all just make-believe. These aren't really queues, but the idea is that they can go where they are now, or that basically the middle section there can be cut off and they loop around it instead, giving you a much longer queue. We have a gate there that opens into the back area of both Little Thunder and Thunderer, to be honest, so that opens up both ways. So have a little play around with these, trying to figure out where they would go and adding in some of the rope that would be, unhooked from one piece and then moved across and hooked onto another to kind of open areas up. And it turns out it ends up pretty good. Like I say, it's just a huge expanse of concrete, and that's exactly the sort of thing that I wanted to get. Move a pillar across here to cap off the edge of the slope there, and stick a security camera up. Security isn't a feature we've got on in the game, but I just feel like that's the sort of place you would probably find a security camera, so kind of fit quite well. And then down there we just stick a bin, because again, if you were queuing, there's lots of bins on queues. It'd be nice if we could actually put bins in queues, I think, but then I guess in the game people don't actually take stuff with them onto queues, do they? I'm not so sure how it works, to be honest. So here we go, we're just moving this. I thought this was the ideal space for a little billboard. Planet Coaster through the ages, not Planet Coaster, sorry, but Pinewood Hills through the years. So we're going to go and copy that one over from Thunderer for now and just place it in. Again, you'll see the billboard in the cinematic at the end. And that's pretty much it. The last bit we're working on today, last main build, is just a toilet. Just doing a standard restroom. This is something we haven't really done since the top of the park, so I felt like they've not needed one here. Felt like it was a good space for it, around the back of the boats and things like that. This sort of shoot the hoops that we've got there, and the boats, they're kind of stuck in. They go, wherever they can fit, and having the idea of having one of them just kind of in front of a toilet kind of seemed accurate. So we have this funky restroom shape here, trying to keep the scale as small as possible. Without going the route of doing sort of custom roofs and custom walls. I know the whole, windows as walls is a big movement in the game at the moment, and I'm really getting into this detailing stuff, but I ain't quite there. I'm not quite at the making every single wall and every single roof custom, because you know what, my PC is 2 years old. If I did that, this would probably be the size of the park I'd get away with. So I'm still using the wall pieces as intended. A little bit of foliage there and some fencing. You want to try and box off the toilets as best you can with a bit of trellis fencing and things like that. Placing an archer down here because I got this little space here. I had the idea of doing some drinks fountains, some water fountains. Nothing major, just a cute little bit of design that just sort of fits in this gap and kind of makes the shape of the building have sense. Makes that sound good, look good. And move a smaller one down there for the kiddies to have a go at as well. And then a quick sign that says drinking water, because there's always one of them for some reason, because what else would it be? And then finally a toilet sign, and that's pretty much it. So we're now going to cut to just sort of capping that area off. Again, using that sort of trellis idea, using the fences there and lapping them over each other. Works out really quite nice, actually. Gives us a nice sort of trellis effect, which I think works out quite nicely. So there's your toilets all sort of boxed off there. And then the last thing we do is something that's been needed to be done for a while, and that is to begin the terrain work around the back of this whole area. I don't do much of this on camera. I'm just showing you a little bit of it here to give you an idea of what we're doing. We've got that top road there, that's the path at the top of the screen there. That's going to be the main road. That's it's not part of the park. It's a road that runs alongside the park. So this will eventually have a fence on as well. At the moment, it's just rocks. But then the lower path is obviously the park itself. Path here that we're going to turn into a bit of an Alden's Rest, sort of chill out area with some benches. And then the lower grey path there, that's going to be the backstage area. So there you go, you'll see the rock work done now. Again, I felt that it wasn't really needed to show you the whole thing, it was getting a bit boring. Again, here we go, using that sort of copper fence to tie it in a little bit with Little Thunder. And then, like I say, we make a bit of an Alden's Rest area up here. Something I see in parks quite a bit, just a space just to chill out, just to come and sit. The kiddies have gone on the coaster, you want to come and have yourself a little sit down. So here we go, doing a little bit of nature. Again, if you don't know what nature is, it's a Mike Sheets term. Mike from RollerCoaster came on the channel and built Thunderer for us. It's his term here. It's sort of like manicured to an extent greenery. So it's not topiary. It's not completely landscaped. It was the stuff that was naturally there that they've cut into, and they just keep it neat. as long as the guests can see it. There's a few videos on it. I'm going to link them in the description. Mike's done one himself, a Bro Basics, and then also Ruble Trillion's got Mike on to do a talk about it as part of Ruble's new tutorial series, which is fantastic. If you've not seen it already, please do so. Again, I'll pop a link in the description. So again, this carrying on this copper fence here around, just so it kind of makes sense. And obviously also keeps them safe as well. I mean, it's not really high enough, probably. That probably needs to be higher to actually sort of conform to safety standards. But what are you going to do? Finally, I wasn't really planning on doing this so soon, and that is to start the foliage around the back of the coaster, because this is going to kind of be the end of the park this way. In the future we may well move into it, but for now it's going to be the end of the park. I didn't really want to do this, but I needed a couple of screenshots of the coaster for the billboard, and it looks really weird to have it just completely open and out of place. So again, using some of the nature techniques, I just placed down the trees here, and then we'll cut to some glamour shots of the park, completely done this area anyway, with some sort of bushes and some extra work on the terrain and things like that. Right, I'll leave you with some pretty shots of what we've got so far. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, you can give us a like. It really does help out the channel, and if you're not already, don't forget to subscribe. Any thoughts, queries or suggestions, you can pop them down in the comments, and if you fancy a chat, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at John T Sparrow. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.